As we celebrate June Dairy Month, the ST Talks by ST Genetics and Uplevel Dairy podcast have banded together to shine a bright light on a collection of great dairy stories. We are rooted in the same core value to provide insightful information to the modern-day dairy producer and believe sharing these uplifting stories may motivate a new mindset or change for your own dairy story.
I'm Peggy Coffeen, host of the Uplevel Dairy podcast, which you can find on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.
And I'm Laura Demmer, host of ST Talks, which you can find on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and Deezer.
In this series, you will hear incredible dairy stories that follow milk along on a journey. From dairy farmers who are opening their doors and inviting consumers in for a seat at their table, to those who work behind the scenes to add value to every molecule of milk, and even a milk drinker who is fueling up to win the race of her life. That's what we have in store for you on ST Talks and the Uplevel Dairy podcast during the special June Dairy Month series.
And our guest today is Rachel Eslick. She is a marathon runner and a motivational speaker with a great story. So Rachel, to start us off today, can you start by telling us a bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. So I grew up on a dairy farm with a family of 7, and I am 5th oldest. And growing up, I am so grateful that my parents encouraged me to joined so many different activities. I was in dance, softball, basketball, track, cross country, and I loved 4-H and showing at the county fair and the state fairs. And I was also really involved in the Iowa Holstein Association and the National Holstein Association, which then trickled into me loving the leadership and the growth and development space. And now my husband and I, we live in Des Moines. He's on the Des Moines Fire Department, and I own my own business as a growth and development coach, motivational speaker, and I get to help teams and organizations show up better for themselves personally so then they can kick butt professionally. And it is so much fun. I absolutely love what I get to do.
Rachel, I love how you've teed us off today with a little bit of your background. And so I'm just picturing you growing up in Iowa on the dairy farm, youngest of 7, is that right?
Fifth. But close, so close to youngest.
Fifth out of 7. And was that the Delaware County Fair that you showed at growing up? Or was it, which one would it have been? What was your favorite? Dubuque. Okay. So, and then all of the activities through the Holstein Association that you mentioned and 4-H. And it's really, really cool to just hear how what you grabbed onto and that you've kept with you has been that leadership aspect and how that's actually turned into a career. And so you mentioned that your career is now in this motivational, leadership realm. Is that always what you've been pursuing in your career, Rachel?
It has always been something I loved. It's always been a huge part of me. I mean, I remember in 4-H when we would have elections, and my first role was secretary of our 4-H club. And I was like, yes, I get to help. I get to support, cheer on the Piasta 4-H pals. And then slowly, when there were opportunities to learn and lead and support, I always just went for them. I just naturally gravitated towards them. I loved that aspect. And then as I grew into my career, after college, I took a job that sounded good, was at a good company. It really wasn't for me. And it was kind of a wake-up call of, ooh, Rachel, you're not in the right spot. And so I changed roles. And when I was at this new company, they asked if I wanted to start leading culture crew and employee engagement and growth and development. And I didn't even know that was a job that existed. But I started to just kind of follow where I was really interested in. And this new role, this new opportunity just opened up. So those leadership aspects that I had learned back in 4-H and throughout my middle school, high school, college career, I got to start doing as a job. And then I started leading a national team and employee engagement and growth and development. And soon I saw an opportunity in the market for energizing, authentic, fun team trainings. And I thought, why not me? I can do that. And so I started my own business. And I feel like I'm living in alignment and living my life purpose because I just really followed where that natural pull was.
That is excellent. And Rachel, I know we're gonna dive into this later, but do you want to just share what your company business name is?
Yes. So my business is called May We All Growth and Development. May We All Growth and Development, really focusing on energizing, educating, and empowering so that team members can show up better personally to then kick butt professionally. Also, main purpose is to kick best self mentality to the curb. So often in the growth and development space, everyone, every book, every podcast is saying like, be your best self, be your best self, be your best self. And the number one cause for a decline in mental health is idealized life, aka this pressure to be so perfect, this pressure to be your best self. And I think that this is going to be really groundbreaking to live as instead your favorite self, to live as the favorite version of you, the version of you that you can get right 100% of the time. And when we get focused on living as our favorite self rather than our best self, we start impressing ourselves rather than others. We start owning our strengths and our passions and living the life that's meant for us rather than being so focused on, do they like it?
Gosh, that's such a good message, Rachel. I always have admired you, but that is just a very good, heartfelt message. And I can see why people enjoy you speaking with their groups. So just as we dive into this podcast a little bit, you have a story that you have just now started to share, and it's fresh, but it is extremely impactful. So before we dive right into that, can you maybe rewind and tell us how you got started with your running aspirations and how you got started within marathons?
Yeah. So in high school, I ran track and cross country, and I did pretty decent. Made it to Drake relays, made it to state, set a school record, and I performed well. Looking back, my mindset was so negative. I was constantly just spiraling myself down. I would pray for rain on meet days because I was so nervous that I wouldn't do good enough. I would tell myself like, this is gonna be really hard. Like, you can't do this. They're so much faster than you. They're so much better than you. And that's really how it went for me in high school. And that's also a reason I'm a cross country coach as well, is because I want to support those cross country runners and help them fall in love with running in a new way that I've found. So after high school, I stopped running, took a break, and I was like, you know what? It just doesn't make me feel good. And then 2020 happened, the good old pandemic, when so many people were like, my gym's closed, I'm just going to hit the streets. And so I started running more than two and started to love it. And then a few years later, my husband and I got married, and it was on the plane ride home from our honeymoon. And I was like, well, I'm done planning a wedding. Like, what am I going to do with all my time now? And so I bought the $5 Wi-Fi and I signed up for my first marathon. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to do a marathon now. And my husband was like, oh my God, what are you doing? Like, married into it. And so I started training for my first marathon. And I knew how running had really gone for me in the past. And so instead I was like, maybe I'll just throw some spaghetti at the wall and just see like what would happen if I really got control of my mindset while running. And instead of when I tell myself, oh, Rachel, you're so tired, what if I told myself, Rachel, you're so strong. Rachel, this really hurts. And then replace it with like, Rachel, you can really do this. And I started to turn my runs into my own little personal like pump up sessions, like my own little gas up times, and running became easier. And I think it's really important for us all to know, like, is what we're telling ourselves in our mind, is it helping us or is it hurting us? Because I didn't realize looking back that how I was speaking to myself was really hurting me and helping me spiral down. And then when I started to become conscious of the thoughts I was telling myself, all boats started to rise and I started to really spiral up. And I absolutely love running now. And I go to bed at night telling my husband, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to run tomorrow. Like, it's my own personal pump up time. And now that's like transcended and trickled in to the rest of my days and all that I do. I show myself that I can go for it every single day. And now I'm like, if I can do that in running, why can't I do that in the rest of my life?
Yeah. Okay, Rachel, I love what you just shared in this personal story. And it sounds like when you convinced yourself that you should sign up for a marathon on the way home from your honeymoon, as much as it was going to be a physical challenge, it sounds like you really set it up to be a mental challenge and to do this as a test of your own mental game. And I think what's really interesting about that dynamic is you were able to recognize what running used to be for you. And you had thoughts in your mind that were very negative that were actually connected to the performance pressure of that experience. And you made a decision that you're going to challenge yourself to flip that. And I'm going to add one more layer to that. And that is, what I've learned, whether it's running or just anything in life. And that is that when we are at at a point of high stress or at a point of a big challenge, that's when it is the easiest to revert back to what we know. And for you, what was embedded in your mind was actually some pretty strong negative self-talk that was associated with this activity. And I just want to really shine a bright light on the challenge that you set yourself up for when you signed up for that marathon, because it wasn't just about the 26.2 miles that you were going to run. It was about the challenge that you would put on yourself, knowing that the hardest thing of this whole race and the whole training process, right? Because a marathon's not a race. It's 4 months of training for one run, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's so much power in that piece of the story. And, for those that are listening, whether you're into running or not, if that's you, think about the things in your life that you've set yourself up for and challenged yourself and your mindset. But think too, especially if you're a parent and you have kids in sports, about this mindset piece. And I think that touches so many of our dairy families that are strong sports families as well. And the way that we want to raise our kids and the values that we've been so good at instilling, but also the ability to really transform a mindset. And I think that's what we're going to keep hearing more from you, Rachel, about.
Thank you. In my first marathon, second best day of my life, I had so much fun. And I think it's because of it, the mindset of just, you got this, Rachel, keep going, you can do it.
And I've known Rachel for quite a long time now. I'm actually her sister-in-law. I'm married to her brother. So the transformation that I've seen from Rachel from the time that I first met her to today, what she's doing and what she's overcome, which we're now going to move into, but this mental wellness and mental strength that she now has is just incredible. So hats off to you, Rachel.
Thank you.
We know that you were this awesome runner. And now let's talk about your marathon running experiences. And so there was a race that really, it's one you'll never forget. And that's what we want to hear a little bit about from you, Rachel. Tell us that story.
Yeah. So after my first marathon, right, second best day of my life, I decided to set a really audacious big goal. And I said, I'm going to qualify for the Boston Marathon. And so from February to June, I ran almost 1,000 miles, snow, rain, sun, so determined. I'm like, I'm going to get this goal no matter what. And the Boston Marathon is the most prestigious marathon in the whole world. Less than 1% of people get in. And for myself to get in, for my age group and my gender, I needed to run under a 3-hour and 30-minute marathon, which is an under 8-minute mile for 26 miles. And to get into Boston as well, they have a lot of applicants. So sometimes they cut from the back. So I was aiming to run a 3-hour and 25-minute marathon for insurance, which is about a 750 pace mile for 26 miles. And so I busted my butt and I said, I'm going to get there. I was so motivated, so determined, and I was in incredible shape. So the marathon I ran was Grandma's Marathon in Duluth, Minnesota. And it was a Saturday morning, the perfect marathon morning. It was crisp, low 50s. And Grandma's Marathon, you run starting in Two Harbors, Minnesota, and you run along Lake Superior down to Duluth, Minnesota. So it's cool. There's tall evergreen trees on the right, Lake Superior on your left, and there's thousands of runners. And I just remember when I started that cross line, I was like, today's the day. Let's go. And I started my watch, and I was just running, going, and I was having the race of my life. Mile 3 went by and I'm like, let's go. We're just getting started. Mile 6, I'm like, what's 20? Mile 10, and I was feeling so strong. Mile 13, I texted my husband and I'm like, I got this. I feel so good. I feel so strong. And I was seeing my husband and my mom every 3 miles, and they would hand me my electrolytes, my hydrosalt to make sure I was getting all the nutrients that I needed. And I was eating my little snacks while running. And then mile 18 came and I'm like, oh, what's 8 miles? Like, I got this. Mile 20, which is known as the wall. And I was like, I'm going to bust through this wall. I'm going to bust through this. Like, I got it. Made it through mile 20. And then it's at mile 22. And my marathon is 26.2 miles. So I have 4.2 miles left. Having trained 1,000 miles to get here, I could run 4 miles in my sleep. So at this point, I was like, I just got to get there. I just got to get there. And I'm on pace to run a 3 hour and 17-minute marathon. Like, I am crushing this thing. And mile 22, running, then just out of the blue, I noticed I stopped sweating and I got a sudden chill. And that has never happened to me. In fact, I think I'm one of the most hydrated people that I know. And all of a sudden I thought, oh my God, this is not good. You know, that gut feeling, you're like, something is wrong. Something is wrong. But I just kept telling myself, I'm like, you don't give up. You don't give up. You don't give up. And I just kept putting like one foot in front of the other. I'm like, you just don't give up. You don't give up. And there's all these aid stations like along the road. So I just started grabbing water and like pouring it on me, trying to drink as much as I can. And I was like, you just got to get there. You just got to get there. Like, you're so close. And I might cry. But I'm at mile 24. And that's the last thing I remember seeing was mile 24. I saw the hospital because it was on the route. And next thing I know, I'm waking up in an ice bath. The paramedics had picked my body off the ground at 25.7. I had a 108 fever, and my heart had flatlined for 20 seconds. And I was less than a half mile away from the finish line. I was so close. And I just missed it. And then I woke up in the ice bath, and by the grace of God, my heart started up on its own. My heart rate data, you see it slowly going down to 0, nothing. And then just a miracle, it just slowly, gradually went from 0 to 10 to 20. And that was really, really hard. I'm really fortunate to be here today and alive. But it was a really, really tough moment because I had this huge goal and I worked so hard. And to just fall this short and to feel that pain, because I was mad, I was embarrassed, I was so sad. Constantly asked myself the question, like, what could I have done different? What should I do? And I went to several doctors, and they all said, you're really healthy, just an act of God. And honestly, that moment, my faith really, really developed and became very strong. But you never want to hear the answer, act of God. You want to know, what's the variable I need to fix?
Right.
So it was a really, really hard day.
Wow. So Rachel, so you don't remember anything from the time you saw mile 24 to when you woke up in an ice bath?
No, I ran about a mile, 1.7 blacked out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, actually a person messaged me on Facebook because I was so close to the finish line. My husband and my mom were at the finish line. It's right, like I should have been there. But a person messaged me on Facebook because I was on the straightaway, and they told me that I rounded the corner, that there wasn't anything in my eyes, but they could tell I was on a mission. And her husband grabbed my shoulders and helped lay me down, which I'm so grateful for, because I probably otherwise would have fallen and really hurt myself, like hurt my head. And so she messaged me on Facebook saying her husband is the one who helped lay me down. She wanted to check up on me and see how I was. But yeah, it was about 1.7 from the last thing I remember.
Wow. So you ran and can't even remember running. You wake up in an ice bath, and there's two big things that stick out. One, what you've reiterated is just how like disappointed you were, right? You were so close. But let's go back to that piece, Rachel. Your heart stopped. Your heart stopped. And so were you wearing a heart rate device where like you can see it, like you could go back and pull it up right now and look at it? Like you have that data of that moment?
Yeah, I have it. At first, especially like as a runner, you'll get this. At first I was ticked. No one stopped my watch.
I would have, yes. I would have.
I was down. I was like so ticked. And I was so close when I was walking out of the med tent. Finally, a few hours later, I was so close to just deleting like my tracked run, because I was just so distraught and so upset. And I couldn't believe, I was like, this is not my life. This isn't real. This doesn't happen to anyone. But I decided to keep it. And I'm really glad, because it gave me a lot of good insight. Yeah, it felt like a nightmare when I woke up and the nurse leaned over to me. I mean, if you want to like visualize it, like I was in a cattle tub full of ice. And she said, "Hey, you didn't finish." It really hurt. And it took a long time to mentally process. And you go for a really big goal, and I made myself very vulnerable. And that's the tough part of running, is every single time you run or you do a race, you put yourself in a vulnerable situation. And to see, well, like, how fast can I go? How far can I go? And I never knew like you could fall this hard or this down. But I'm really grateful right now that I'm choosing to use that moment to strengthen me, rather than saying that's my fate and I stay down now. If anything, that's not how my story is going to end. And I'm going to use that to launch me, and I'm going to use it to help others not stay down either.
And I think, Rachel, at this point, when this all happened, this was such a low for you. Your mental strength really shot into the bucket during this time. So, we're coming up on a year that this has happened now, and a lot has changed for you in this year. Can you share with us maybe how this experience changed how you view and now approach your day to day, and maybe if you could just share with us what you did to overcome this scary experience.
Yeah. It was really, really tough at first. And at first I expected myself to get over it really, really fast. And I realized when I was trying to force myself and to push myself to be like, get over it, you're fine, everything's roses. Toxic positivity doesn't do anyone good. It's not what we need in that moment. And I read this story, and it was how a lobster grows. And so when lobsters are born, they're like small little squishy creatures. But their life purpose is to be like these big meaty lobsters, like these big old things. And so as a lobster goes and grows throughout life, their squishy little bodies start to expand. And their current small little rigid shell becomes tighter and more uncomfortable until it gets to a point where they're like, I have no choice. Like, I have to bust out of this shell. And in that moment, they go behind a rock and their shell just breaks off and they're left being very, very vulnerable and naked, afraid. And soon this new shell forms and it's a bigger shell. And then they can walk out from behind that rock and they start living. And as they go and as they grow, soon that shell becomes really, really tight again. And it's part of the process to help them, grow into their life purpose, to help them be who they're meant to be. And what I took from that is there's going to be moments, especially as we're going for big, amazing things in life, right? If it was easy to qualify for the Boston Marathon, everyone would do it. If it was easy to own your own business or to go for these big, audacious goals, we'd always have it. But to go for those big things often comes a lot of uncomfortable feelings and getting very, very vulnerable. And what I've learned is it's okay to go behind that rock as your shell busts off and to let yourself sit and to let yourself be down. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. We need it to mentally and to physically recover. But the most important part, though, is that you come back out from that shell and you keep going, And if anyone is going through a hard time, I just want you to know that it's okay to take that break, but you need to come back out because you have to keep showing up. You have something that no one else in the world has. You have a purpose. You have talents and strengths and passions. And we need you. We need you to keep showing up, and you need it too. And so when you get knocked down, you have to stand back up. And this time when you stand back up, you're going to stand up so much stronger because you have that in you. You have that strength in you. So I just want others to know that you got to keep going. You're so much stronger than you think.
So Rachel, as you give that example of the story of the lobster, and when the lobster is weak and vulnerable and hiding behind the rock, it'd be really easy to just stay there, to just stay hidden. And that could have been you. You could have been the lobster that stayed behind the rock where it was safe and quiet and protected from the scariness of what's outside. What got you out from behind the rock after all this happened?
I decided I'm not going to stay down. I know I'm a Boston Marathon qualifier. I know that I got so much more in me. And so I said, no, I'm going to stand back up and I'm going to come back swinging. And it started with some baby steps, right? Going back for my first run again. And then signing up for a half marathon. Again, just I didn't have to achieve marathon within 2 months of this all happening. What I needed to do is just find small little steps to keep going and just start showing up again. And every single step is a confidence boost. Every single step builds upon one another. And so I signed up for a half marathon and I started training for that because, we're going to get back on the horse. And that was a few weeks ago. And I didn't realize how mentally hard that was going to be, especially if anyone sets a goal, gets knocked down, and then when they stand up to like start to face a bit of that again, it can be really mentally hard. And you can start to feel some of those same feelings and fears that like, what if it happens again? What could go wrong? But I knew like this is the exact thing I needed to break out of. This was the exact thing I needed to do. So my husband walked with me to the start line, and I remember I was on the start line, and then like my eyes started to well up with tears because he was like, okay, I'll see you at mile 3. And I was like, oh my God, like, this is it. Like, okay, no, it's just by myself. I'm just by myself. But that's exactly what I needed to do. I needed to rely on my own strength that I could do this. And so I ran my first half marathon back. I was scared and I was nervous, but I smacked the crap out of it. I went for it. I got my goal. I won my age group. And it was the exact confidence boost I needed to show like, no, like when you get knocked down, you don't stay down and you're going to stand back up stronger. Like testament 1.
Yeah. And so you crossed that finish line at the half and you really found your new shell and owned it. And so at what moment did you decide I'm going to sign up for a marathon again?
I decided I was going to sign up for a marathon again probably about a month after this happened last year. But what marathon? I'm not sure. I'd actually reached out to a coach, and he told me when I wanted to run a marathon in October last year, 4 months after this all happened. And he told me that is too soon. And he was like, you need more time to recover. And I'm actually really grateful for that because it gave myself time, right, to stay behind that rock, to refocus, what do I truly want? Where am I going? And so I decided to sign up for a marathon this coming September. And it's in Geneva, Illinois on September 7th. It'll be about a year and 3 months after my incident at Grandma's Marathon. So I've built up so much strength physically and mentally. And I'm working with a coach this time around too, to just have an extra person on my team to help me get to where I want to go. And I'm asking for help this time. And I think sometimes that's really hard to do, is to like swallow our pride and our ego and say like, I don't have it all figured out. And this next time I'm going for this goal, I'm going to go in smarter. I'm going to go in stronger. I'm going to go in with a team, so that I can get my goal of qualifying for Boston. And so I've already started training for that next marathon, and I'm nervous because, right, at mile 22 of my last marathon, that's where this sudden feeling hit me. So yes, I'm nervous, and I'm really, really, really excited to show myself what I got, because I know I have so much in me, and I think we all do. We all have so much more in us than we give ourselves credit for. And I cannot wait to get this goal. It's going to be a bad day to be a marathon on September 7th.
Well, you have quite the team behind you, not only with your coach, but with your family and friends rooting for you. And I'm sure after people listen to this podcast, you will have a whole new set of cheerleaders cheering you on September 7th, Rach. So as we continue to just talk about how you are refueling for marathon training, a lot of this training has to do with nutrition. So can you tell us, does dairy play a part in this for you and for your meal plan and your marathon training?
Yes, the dairy roots still run incredibly deep. In fact, I was joking with my husband, Jake, this morning that we do nearly need our own cow because we go through so much milk. And we live in like the suburbs, so I think we could do really well with one cow, raw milk all around. But yes, I spend so many hours training and running and speed workouts and lifting that it all plays such a huge role. And I've realized if I want to optimize all that time that I'm out there training, I need to make sure that I'm recovering and refueling really, really well, or else it's like leaving money on the table. I just spent all this time and I didn't get all of the gains that I possibly could. After I run, I always make sure I have a glass of milk, and oftentimes I also add a scoop of protein powder too, just for like extra protein. And I sweat so much when I run. And so I really need to like refuel my electrolytes as well. And milk does a better job at refueling than most commercial sports drinks. And I think that is not something that many people know. So many, right, reach just for like the Gatorade or the Pedialyte, when milk has like the calcium, the sodium, the potassium. So that is so beneficial for myself as well, to like rebuild my muscles, replenish my electrolytes, and also good fats and carbs. And then especially if I have like a double digit day or I'm running over 10, 12 miles for that day's workout, I notice I'm extra hungry during the day. And so some of my favorite snacks are like Greek yogurt with berries and granola, cottage cheese. We go through a lot of cottage cheese in this house. And then also my husband and I, we are just ice cream fanatics. We celebrate almost everything with ice cream. Some do champagne, we do ice cream.
There you go.
Well, I love this. I love hearing about how dairy has continued to be a part of not just your upbringing and your life, but you've brought it into as a critical aspect of your recovery from your workouts and your marathon training plans and processes. And so an excellent advocate and voice that you are for the dairy industry through what you're already doing. And I mean, I don't think anyone's going to argue with the results, that it definitely keeps you energized as well.
It so does. I finished a race a few weeks ago, and at the end of the finish line, there was some other snacks and there was chocolate milk. And the only thing that sounded good was chocolate milk. I was like, I do not want anything else, but this is the thing that is going to quench that thirst, truly.
So, we've already talked about mental toughness, as well as now nutrition, but what would be your biggest refuel tips to other runners out there, Rachel?
I would say my biggest refuel tips is you probably need to eat more than you realize. You need to consume more than you realize. So often I would do a really hard workout or I'd go for a run and then I would just eat normal throughout the day, which is what I would eat before I was into like my running training block era. And I would notice later at night, I would get like more snacky, or during the run the next day, I wouldn't feel as strong. And what I've come to realize through, as we do, trial and error, was that the more that I consume, the stronger I feel. And I think that's especially important for female athletes to know, is like, we work out, we run to feel strong, and strong bodies is what gets you through, not smaller. So I just making sure that we're consuming enough and nutrient dense food. So I'm not saying like eat everything under the sun and order 10 pizzas, but to eat like that quality food, because you are going to feel so much stronger. And since I've really started to prioritize that, I think I'm in the fastest, best shape of my entire life.
Wow. So it's really made a difference for you as you've prioritized dairy and just overall nutrition as a way to refuel and restore, and also prep you and get you ready for the next race. I love how you put it. It's leaving the money on the table when you don't do those things.
So, you have given a lot of great advice so far. But I'm going to ask you, if you were to give anyone else that is, really looking for a comeback, you are experiencing like one of the best comebacks I've ever seen. So if you were to give advice to others in a situation maybe similar, what are you telling them?
That's such a good question. One of my favorite quotes is, be an active participant in your own rescue. And so often in life, when we get knocked down, it can be really easy for us to point the finger and the blame at all of these external factors and get into victim mentality. And what I would challenge you to do is, when you're being an active participant in your own rescue, is one, right? Do what you need to do. Go behind the rock. Take the time to physically, mentally recover, and to not glaze yourself with toxic positivity. And to not stay down. To not stay down. Be an active participant in your own rescue of who can you ask for help? What can you start doing? What can you start researching? What do you wish you would have known before this all happened? And if there is a hurdle, you jump over it, you go for it, or you find someone to help you do that. But do not stay down. Help yourself, be an active participant in your own rescue, because you got it. You got it. You just have to keep going.
That is excellent.
And Rachel, truly, you are an inspiration to anyone who's listening here. And I think we can all take little pieces and parts and relate it back to whatever challenges we may have faced, whether we're runners, whether we can relate to people close to us that are in competitive sports and experiences, but just to really zoom out and bring it into the resilience that's required every single day of our dairy farmers. And of course, you know that because that is your background. That's where you came from as well. And I want to also revisit once again this beautiful story that you shared about the life of the lobster. And when you talked about that, you also said that the lobster's growth and development through these stages, it's all part of fulfilling its life's purpose. And now that lobster knows its life purpose, right? It was born with that. And and we all are too in some way. But what I really am curious to hear from you, Rachel, is in the times that you've been able in the last year to take the moments to go behind the rock, to come back out in your new shell, and to really become more in tune and alignment with your own purpose. How do you define what that is?
As every single time a shell has broken off, I feel like it was a moment for me, right when you're behind that rock, when I would rethink about, well, who do I want to be? And what do I want to do? And this moment of my marathon, I was about gone like this. I could have been done. And I'm so fortunate to be here. And it really was a wake-up call of I'm holding myself back a lot. And I had these dreams, these goals, these aspirations. Like I really wanted to start this business. I started my business after this marathon. But I think a lot of us share the thoughts of fear, judgment of others. Well, I can't do that. I'm not going to be good enough there. What if I fail? And this time around, when my shell really broke off, and it broke off in the most traumatic way, it helped me really think like, I'm going to start going for it. I'm going to stop being the only one holding myself back. And that's really where like favorite self mentality comes from, of living as my favorite self, to not live a life that impresses others, but to live a life that impresses me. And to make sure, like my husband and I, we're going to go on that trip. We're going to create the life that makes us feel really good. And as I've started to lean into that more, I feel like my life purpose, especially with my business, has really blossomed into something better than I could have ever imagined. Last year at this time, I never would have thought that I get to go into teams and organizations and empower them, to energize them. I never even thought that was possible. To speak at women's conferences, to do one-on-one coaching. I didn't even know that was a thing. But when I was really gravitating towards that and I realized I was the only one holding myself back, my life purpose started to grow into something bigger than I ever initially dreamed. And I cannot wait to see all that's going to continue to come. Like there's so much unknown and there's so much good unknown. And I'm going to let myself feel that full on.
And Rachel, that reminds me of something I actually saw on your Instagram page, which for those out there listening that want to follow Rachel along in her exciting and colorful and energized Instagram, which is Rachel May Eslick on Instagram, there was something that you said, a little quote. It said, "So many good unknowns are waiting for you." And is that what you'd like to leave our listeners with today? That message?
So many good unknowns are waiting for you if you let yourself feel them and to seek them out. Another is opportunity dances with those on the dance floor.
That is a very fitting quote for you, Rachel, and thank you for sharing all of that wisdom. I know Peggy had just shared your Instagram handle, but if those that are listening want to reach out to you to have them or to have you come speak to their groups or share this story with maybe a business, a group, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you or to learn more about your coaching?
Yeah. You can visit me at mayweall, MAEWEALL.com. Email myself at hello@mayweall.com, and I would be honored to come support and energize your team.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for joining us today and sharing this incredible story. We appreciate your time and look forward to cheering you on September 7th as you try to qualify for your Boston Marathon.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Rachel. And if you like what you've heard today and want more of it in your ear every week, please take a minute to follow Up Level Dairy Podcast on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.
And ST Talks on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and Deezer. Or you can learn more about ST Genetics by visiting our website at stgen.com. Thank you so much for joining us as we celebrate June Dairy Month. ST Talks and Up Level Dairy Podcast are proud to bring you these incredible dairy stories and hope you join us for the next one launching tomorrow.